Welcome to using JPA for database operations. After watching this video, you will be able to define Java Persistence API or JPA and its role in managing database operations, compare JPA to traditional JDBC for database interaction, and implement JPA configuration in a Spring Boot application. Working with relational databases is a critical part of many Java applications. While JDBC provides a way to interact with databases, it requires a lot of boilerplate code, such as managing connections, writing SQL queries, and handling results. This is where JPA comes in. So, what is JPA? The JPA is a specification for managing relational data in Java applications. It provides an abstraction layer over database operations, enabling developers to focus on application logic rather than boilerplate SQL and database management code. JPA allows you to map Java objects, known as entities, to relational database tables, making it easier to interact with data in a way that aligns with object-oriented programming principles. At its core, JPA defines a set of standards for object relational mapping, or ORM, which is the process of converting data between incompatible systems, specifically mapping database rows to Java objects. It includes a collection of annotations and methods that simplify database interactions, making your code cleaner, more maintainable, and easier to understand. The key features of JPA are as follows. Abstraction over SQL. Developers work with Java objects instead of raw SQL queries. Entity management. JPA manages the lifecycle of objects like persisting, merging, and deleting. Simplified querying. JPA provides a query language, or JPQL, for querying objects in a database. So why do we use JPA? Firstly, it simplifies database interactions. The traditional approach requires developers to write significant amounts of boilerplate code, such as opening connections, managing statements, and processing result sets. JPA eliminates much of this repetitive code by providing built-in mechanisms to handle these operations automatically. For example, instead of writing raw SQL queries to insert data, you can simply call the save method on a repository, and JPA handles the rest. JPA also maps objects to tables. It allows you to map Java classes directly to database tables, making it easier to work with relational data using familiar object-oriented concepts. For example, a book class, with attributes like title and author, maps directly to a books table with corresponding columns. This seamless mapping reduces the gap between the object-oriented nature of Java and the tabular structure of relational databases. Next comes database independence. JPA abstracts database-specific operations, allowing your application to be database agnostic. This means you can switch between different relational database management systems like MySQL, PostgreSQL, or Oracle with minimal code changes. Without JPA, SQL queries and operations are often tightly coupled to a specific database, making migrations difficult. With JPA, you use entity-based queries independent of the underlying database. JPA also automates schema management. With JPA, you can configure your application to automatically create, update, or validate database schemas based on your entity classes. This eliminates the need for manual schema management, especially during development. For example, by setting spring.jpa.hibernate.ddl-auto equals update. JPA can create or alter tables in your database to match your entity definitions. Next, it improves maintainability. JPA allows you to manage data using objects rather than SQL, reducing the risk of errors and making your codebase easier to maintain. Since entities encapsulate both data and behavior, any changes to your data model are localized to the entity definitions, making your application more flexible and adaptable to future requirements. Lastly, it integrates seamlessly with Spring Boot. Spring Boot provides excellent support for JPA, through its spring-boot-starter-data-JPA dependency. It automates much of the configuration and integrates repositories that offer built-in methods for common database operations like save, find by ID, and delete. Setting up JPA in Spring Boot involves many steps. First, add dependencies, then configure application.properties, define an entity, and finally create a repository. Add the following dependencies to your pom.xml file to enable JPA in a Spring Boot application. Take time to read through the dependencies. The Spring Boot starter for JPA provides the libraries needed to integrate JPA with Spring Boot. The MySQL JDBC driver connects the application to a MySQL database. To configure application.properties, set the database JPA configuration in src/main/resources/application.properties as follows. The spring.jpa.hibernate.ddl-auto-part automatically manages the database schema, and the update part updates the schema based on your JPA entities. So, if your database is missing some tables, but your JPA has the right classes, those missing tables will be auto-created. Other options for this setting would be create, validate, or none. The spring.jpa.show-SQL part logs the generated SQL queries for debugging purposes. An entity is a Java class mapped to a database table. In this code, @entity is an annotation that marks the class as a JPA entity mapped to a database table. And @ID is an annotation that denotes the primary key of the entity. The @generated-value part is an annotation that specifies how the primary key is generated like auto or identity. A repository provides an interface for performing CRUD operations on entities. In this code, JPA repository is a built-in Spring Data JPA interface that provides methods like save, find all, and delete by ID. And book, long specifies the entity type, for example, book, and the type of its primary key, for example, long. Here is a basic example for a bookstore application. In this code snippet, the setTitle method on the book object sets the title. Similarly, the setAuthor method sets the author, and the setPrice method sets the price. The save method of the book repository object saves the book object to the database. If the books table doesn't exist, JPA will create it, depending on DDL-auto settings. Here are some best practice tips. First, keep entities simple. Only include fields relevant to the database schema. Second, use descriptive names. Ensure entity class names and attributes are intuitive and match the domain model. And finally, leverage repository methods. Use built-in CRUD methods like save and find all before writing custom queries. In this video, you learned that JPA simplifies database operations by abstracting SQL and managing entities. JPA provides built-in mechanisms to handle database operations automatically. You use dependencies and configuration files to set up JPA in Spring Boot. And you use basic CRUD operations for repositories and entities.